President Myung and Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi exchanged well wishes after the latter garners a historic majority in a landslide snap election victory. We have more on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome. You're watching Press Perspective for this Thursday, February 12th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Now today we delve into diplomacy as South Korea and Japan reaffirm their commitment to productive partnership to weather the current climate of geopolitical uncertainty. For more on this, I have freelance journalist Raphael Rashid here in the studio. Raphael, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I also have Chloe Borgnon with French broadcaster France 24 with us. Chloe, it's great to have you here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Raphael, we shall start with you. So, as I mentioned in the short clip, there were warm words exchanged between President Myung and Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi following her historic win in the snap election. What exactly was said and what were your takeaways?
Right, so President Lee posted his congratulations on social media just a few days ago after Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party secured the two-thirds majority in the 465 member House of Representatives. And so Lee wrote that he sincerely congratulated Takaichi on the election victory and hopes that Japan will continue to develop under her leadership. I think the tone of his message, I thought it was quite warm in itself. Lee referenced the January summit, of course, that happened in Nara, saying that the two countries had taken a confident step forward towards a new 60 years of relationships and expressed hope to kind of expand on this cooperation based on mutual trust and solidarity. And also he added that he looked forward to, of course, seeing Takaichi again, inviting her to Korea for this so-called shuttle diplomacy. I believe, the talks are that it might happen in Lee's hometown of Andong, so we'll see if that actually happens. But Takaichi also responded in kind, thanking Lee for his warm congratulations, and also emphasized that Japan and Korea are important neighbors, of course, who must cooperate as partners on all sorts of things, including the international challenges that they all face. She also highlighted their shared understanding of their strategic importance of the relationship and hoped that, of course, this relationship would develop further for this kind of future-oriented relationship that she has been the two sides have been talking about. So I think in this sense, there's real pragmatism. Of course, we hear this word every day from the Lee government. This pragmatism is driving this warmth forward. And I think at this time in particular, both sides need one another probably more than ever. Of course, Japan faces mounting tensions when it comes to China, of course, over Taiwan issues. And so I think Japan needs Seoul as a kind of security partner. And then on the other hand, we have South Korea also trying to play a balancing act between Beijing and Tokyo, again, managing North Korean threats. So overall, I think there's definitely a lot of pragmatism in this relationship. And it will, of course, this election victory has been, some people are saying in Seoul, there might be some concerns that the party, Takaichi's party, might push forward with some kind of nationalist agendas. So there's a little bit of concern, but overall I think this will probably go forward in the right direction.
All right. Staying with that then, Chloe, the media, it's been very quick to assert that Prime Minister Takaichi's election victory sets the stage for a rightward shift with regard to Japan's policies. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, so as Raphael was saying, there's the idea that with this landslide victory, the party of Prime Minister Takaichi is going to be able to enhance the conservative views that they have. So the Prime Minister, she has been speaking about the fact that she wants to make Japan strong and prosperous. So there is, I would say, 5 different points, major areas where we will see probably some big evolution and big movements now that the party of Prime Minister Takaichi is in power. So the first one will be defense. We've been speaking about that quite a lot already. We know that she wants to move around the constitution to be able to enhance military capabilities for Japan. So she wants a revision on security and defense policies by December, so next year. She also wants to lift the ban on Japan exports, exportation of weapons. And she wants actually to be moving away from the pacifist agreement that was set up in the Japanese constitution post-war. So that's one of the things we can see. Someone might be a bit pleased about that, which is President Donald Trump, because Takaichi has been saying that she will want to follow up a pledge that she's been doing with the American president, saying that Japan annual defense budget will double to reach the level of 2% of gross domestic product by March that could be invested into Japanese defense. So that's the first point. Second thing is diplomacy. So again, Japan wants to get even closer to the US. We've seen that with their recent meeting between Donald Trump and the Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. And they also, at the opposite side, the very fierce position against China. So as Raphael was speaking about, the stance of the Prime Minister on Taiwan in November has been putting a lot of very ice relationship between the two countries. And it might not change with the Prime Minister getting more power in her home country and being backed up more by the lower house. Then the third point would be immigration. She wants tougher policies. It's going in the same way, in the direction of a growing far-right position in the country, saying that, according to them, the fact that the previous party has been promoting foreign labor as a solution for the declining population in Japan has actually been making Japanese community what they say is unsafe and has caused cultural clashes. So in January, so last month actually, the party of Takaichi has been approving tougher rules on permanent residency, on naturalization, for example, so making it a bit harder for foreigners to get settled in Japan and to work there. She also has a conservative view on the societal point of view. So she wants to preserve traditional values. She's for the rule of the imperial family, male-only rule of succession. That was kind of discussed recently because of the change of mind in the modern-day society. So she has been saying that she wants to say with the male-only rule. She's also, for example, against the same-sex marriage. So that's to show the most conservative views on society. And then the last thing that could also be something that South Korea needs to watch out is the economy. She wants to stop the rising prices, but doing that will go with a boost from the government spending and a lot of help from the government in a lot of different funding. She has already set up 17 strategic areas where the government will be giving funds and helping industry to try to make the product more competitive, for example, in food, energy, defense, supply chains. So that's to be seen now that she has more powers, all things will be able to develop and what will be the priority for the government.
Right, indeed. And something else that Japan's neighbors will be watching for is that in an interview with Fuji Television, she spoke of wanting to create an environment that allows a Yasukuni visit to be understood by Japan's neighbors. Mm-hmm. Now, she has been a regular visitor, but she stopped. She refrained from visiting the Tokyo shrine, the Yasukuni shrine, once she entered office. How feasible is the possibility of setting up an environment in which Japan's neighbors are understanding of such a visit?
I think the desire I think is aspirational at best. I think quite frankly it would be very difficult to achieve this. Of course, the core problem here, it's not just that Japan wants to mourn the war dead. This is the Yasukuni Shrine, specifically enshrines Class A war criminals among the 2.5 million people who died in conflict since the 19th century. So this is just not any place per se. The shrine and its museum present what many in South Korea, but also in China, they view as whitewashing of Japan's aggressions of the past. So I think that's why high-level visits have repeatedly triggered this intense backlash and, if not diplomatic crises. And of course, I think no sitting Prime Minister in Japan has visited since Shinzo Abe did, I believe it was in 2013. And of course, Takaichi herself has visited on many occasions before taking office, of course. So, you know, if we're going to move forward, I think for these neighbors to kind of move forward and accept this Yasukuni Shrine, I think we need several things. I think first we would need much stronger and repeated acts of contrition from Japan. You know, clear, unambiguous statements about its past and kind of statements of remorse that are not just a quick thing, but sustained over time. I think also Japan might have to elevate other alternative memorial sites so that they can offer, you know, their offerings and rituals to this other elevated site, while also maybe framing Yasukuni visits as purely personal or religious. I think also you would definitely need a lot more sustained improvement in bilateral ties between two sides, strong enough so that the governments can choose this muted criticism as opposed to complete escalation on both sides. So you really need to have a solid relationship. And I think, you know, of course, the two sides at the moment, South Korea and Japan, are trying to do that, but I don't think it's something that will, you know, magically happen overnight. And of course, there is the China factor as well. The kind of structural limitations, if you will. Some scholars say that China's party state uses wartime trauma and memory for domestic legitimacy purposes, and so they might have a strong incentive to kind of keep Yasukuni symbolically toxic, if you will. It's used for these domestic purposes. And of course, in South Korea, you have competitive, democratic kind of politics and also civic groups that might object to any softening in stance. So any softening in stance, I think, could be quite risky for the leaders here. So overall, I think it would be difficult. It would be, I think, again, probably the best thing would be a situation where if something happens, we would have criticism, maybe formulaic criticism, but also the ability to move forward and also, you know, deal with that separately and continue the relationship going forward. So I think even that could be ambitious in itself.
Right, and speaking about going forward then, Chloe, beyond their dispute over history, how does Japan's potential shift to the right in terms of policies look to affect its ties with South Korea?
So if we're just looking at the overall grip on the lower house that now the party of the Prime Minister has, which is unprecedented in history since the post-war Japan system. So some pundits are saying that it will actually make Japan more stable in a political way. And so for South Korea, it would be an easier way to do diplomacy and to have discussion. So as we were saying, and as Raphael was saying, in the message to congratulate the Prime Minister's victory, Myung was speaking about the fact that he's happy for the shuttle diplomacy to keep on going. And it's true that it's obviously always the way in diplomacy is the president or the head of state will also meet the other head of state, while afterwards, when you're going back to your country, the discussion and the internal politics and game of politics with the parliament or everything can be sometimes difficult when the legislative and executive powers are not together. That can also happen in France, for example. So this is something that's made to balance the powers, but in the same time, for the partners outside, it can be kind of difficult because you can only speak with one head of the two powers at a time. So the fact that the country is now more stable will help probably to get things moving in the diplomacy sector. But then the other thing is, as we were speaking about the conservative movement and the fact that Japan is going to move on several areas, there is a risk of raising confrontation. Let's keep this word kind of lower degree, but things can be a bit more confrontational with South Korea. For example, the fact that the relationship with the neighbors might be harder to compensate. For example, the relationship with China. We know that South Korea is trying to stay on good terms with China at the moment. We discussed already the fact that Japan has been having confrontations with China. The fact that Japan also wants to raise its defense and its army expansion could also be raising tension in the peninsula with North Korea, for example, with China, with Russia. And then for South Korea, we'll also have to keep an eye on that and be able to respond and maybe also offer either help or criticism for its ally, Japan. And the last thing is probably the thing that might be the strongest one in the near future will be the economical competition between the two neighbors, because obviously the exchange are going on between South Korea and Japan. But the truth is, if Japan is really trying to boost their competitiveness and making government funding into some specific sectors, then those products might be more competitive than the South Korean ones, and then other countries might want to go buy from Japan rather than from South Korea. So that's something that could be a bit of a competition edge between the two countries.
Right. And with regard to broader regional diplomacy, Raphael, just days after Seoul and Tokyo agreed to resume their maritime search and rescue exercises, there were reports of a similar resumption between Seoul and Beijing. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Right. So defense officials from South Korea and China, they met in Beijing last week for their 21st bilateral defense policy meeting, the first in-person talks of such a kind in, I believe, 3 years. And they discussed resuming joint search and rescue exercises in the Yellow Sea after a 15-year hiatus. So this could be quite significant. Of course, these drills, they began in 2005 for humanitarian maritime cooperation purposes, and they were held in 2007 and also in 2008. And I think the last exercises were conducted in 2011. They ended during a period of strained kind of relationships between the two sides, following strengthened US-South Korea exercises and, of course, the deployment of the THAAD missile defense system, which Beijing strongly opposed. So I think, as you mentioned, the timing right now is quite significant. It's quite notable, given that this announcement came just a week after Seoul and Tokyo agreed to resume their own joint naval search and rescue exercises. So those themselves had been suspended, I believe, for 9 years. So basically within days of one another, we have South Korea having similar talks on both sides. So I think that in itself is quite significant, although I believe the Seoul-Tokyo talks would probably be a little more concrete, and with Beijing, I guess it's still at a discussion stage. Of course, the broader implications of all this point to President Lee Jae-myung's balancing act that he's trying at the moment, trying to maintain the kind of US alliance and security cooperation with Japan while simultaneously trying to improve ties with Beijing. But I think, of course, this was the first step, having the talks. One thing to look out for during these talks, Seoul did raise concerns about Chinese military activity in Korea's air defense identification zone, particularly after 9 Chinese and, I believe, Russian aircraft entered the zone back in December. So I think whilst there's movement definitely towards cooperation, there does still exist underlying tensions that we can't ignore. And I think Seoul, of course, is trying to navigate these difficult waters, no pun intended, and try to, play this balancing act with all parties involved.
Right. Meanwhile, across the border in North Korea, Kim Jong-un's Army Day speech for this year, Chloe, has been receiving quite a bit of attention. Could you tell us why and what are your takeaways?
Yeah, so I would say why the main reason is that everything is being analyzed at the moment because everyone wants to know when the 9th Congress for the party will be happening. According to the South Korea National Intelligence Services, it could be this month, probably at the end of the month. So I feel like every event right now happening in North Korea is being more scrutinized even than ever. It's important to see, like in the takeaways, the main thing was obviously that Kim Jong-un said that the army's irreplaceable and outstanding role, that's what he said, will be further elevated for the next 5 years to come. So that's probably something that would be announced at the Congress, since this Congress is happening every 5 years to give away the main direction for the countries for the 5 years to come. It's interesting to see that it shows the need for the regime to remind everyone of the central space taken by the army in the country. So that could be, according to some pundits, showing that the army and the military are having a bit of a hard time at the moment and are in need of a pat in the back to show that they're still a central piece of the regime. That's also because the army is playing a dual role in North Korea. So they're being used to, in the same time, obviously doing what military is supposed to do, which is protection of the country. And then they're also being used for national and large-scale construction and development projects. And we know that the country has been building up a lot of infrastructure recently. They've been opening up a lot of different places recently. So the army is in need of recognition. And then there's also another thing that is, I think, an important takeaway, is the absence of rhetoric targeting South Korea or the United States. Unlike the speeches in 2024, 2025 that the North Korean leader has been giving at the time, where he was very harsh language toward the two countries. He emphasized the war readiness of North Korea. He spoke about the nuclear capabilities. This time was very soft-worded and no direct mention to South Korea or the US, which is interesting to note.
Right. Quite a number of pundits, Raphael, have been saying that Kim Jong-un's speech was more like a boost for morale among his soldiers rather than an attack on South Korea or the US, as he did not mention neither countries. They say it's also because he is perhaps keeping in mind the expected diplomatic activity between the US and China, especially following phone talks between the two leaders in recent days. What has been shared about the latest exchange between Mr. Trump and Xi Jinping?
Yeah, they had a call the other day, very extensive. I believe it lasted almost 2 hours and covered a wide range of topics and issues, though I think the key here is that the two leaders emphasized quite different things when it comes to their public readouts. Trump described the call as excellent, claimed that they had discussed Iran, trade, Taiwan, and of course his planned trip to Beijing in April, and he called the relationship with China, but also his personal relationship with Xi as extremely good, and that both sides realized the importance of keeping this to go forward. Trump also mentioned that maybe China might be buying, that there might be purchases of US soybeans and whatnot. But when we look at Xi's readout, I think what was notable that it was a little bit more pointed, particularly when it comes to Taiwan. Chinese state media said that Xi told Trump that Taiwan is the most important issue in China-US relations and warned that China will never allow Taiwan to be separated from China. So I guess, this call seems to have gone well, but overall, it seems that both sides want to maintain dialogue, but underlying strategic competition does remain.
All right. I suppose we'll hear more about it when they meet in April, I believe, in Beijing, hopefully. All right. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. Raphael, as always, thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Chloe, thank you very much for your time and thoughts.
Thank you.
Right. That ends this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching, and do join us again same time tomorrow.